Religion, the God archetype. Religious buildings and ritual are designed to enchant. Churches are buildings designed to induce enchantment. The normal church is large with high ceilings, quiet, still and dim, with light shining down through coloured glass windows, ideal for the trance state. Prayer involves being enchanted, usually a group enchantment. This was recognised under the now repealed Psychological Practices Act Victoria, where ministers of religion were one of the professions allowed to practice hypnosis. Regression. The King James Bible was written in language that was, even in its own day, archaic. This was to increase the effect of regression to an earlier age, state, and enhance its enchanting effect. For example, the King James Version of Psalms 23:4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, is far more enchanting than, say, even if I walk through a very dark valley, I will not be afraid, because you are with me. Apart from using archaic language, the King James Version has rhythm, requires concentration to sort out valley, shadow and death, and it uses two abstract concepts, shadow and death. It makes the imagination focus intently to conjure up a picture from the powerful imagery. The way to the soul is through enchantment, bewitchment. Whether or not you believe in God, you have a soul, and it is accessed in an entranced state. The liturgy is directed towards putting you in trance with incantation, ritual, chanting, singing and prayer, and in that state having your unconscious mind communicate with a higher power. As to whether the higher power is wholly located within the unconscious, within the mind, or whether the unconscious is in communication with an entity located outside the body, goes beyond the bounds of this book. Religious trance normally beneficial and safe. Normally, with the mainstream religions, the religious enchantment, bewitchment in the case of a goddess, is beneficial and safe. There is a trade-off, of course, in that you must accept the doctrines and mores of the church, but so long as you're content to do that, then the church and congregation hold you psychologically safe. They give you support and empowerment. The churches have for millennia looked after the psychological well-being of the people. Before the skyscrapers, the most prominent buildings in cities were the churches, buildings erected at great cost for the spiritual and psychological well-being of the society. Religious trances imposed by cults or extremists put you in danger. But you do have to be careful with the religious enchantment to avoid cultists or extremists, because you put yourself under the power of the spiritual leaders and the mores of the group. And if you come under the enchantment of cults or extremists, you put yourself in danger. You do not want to end up as a suicide bomber. Only the gods can live on Olympus. Symbolically, the universe is divided into three regions: the celestial, the terrestrial, and the infernal. There's danger that the unconscious can become fixated on the celestial. That is, the unconscious can attempt to make the body less earthly and more ethereal. This can lead to problems with nutrition, where the person tries to limit his or her diet to a purer diet, or a diet that has less impact upon the earth's resources. And if your body is not getting adequate nutrition, this prevents the gut from providing the brain with important neurotransmitters, and this prevents your mind from working properly. Fixation on the celestial can also lead to attempts to abandon sensual pleasures and lead an abstinent lifestyle. Taken to extremes, this can lead to unfortunate results. Because of the compensatory function of the unconscious, witness the occurrence of sexual abuse of children, by celibate clergy. Life, death, rebirth mythology. The unconscious, at the other extreme, may become fixated with the infernal and become absorbed with the underworld and death, as did the ancient Egyptians. Life, death, rebirth symbolism, as embodied in the Isis theology, the Easter celebration, or many other theologies, is particularly powerful. By all means, learn and let these theologies resonate with your unconscious to the extent that it is healthy, but take care. Remember that whilst we might have connection with the celestial and infernal, we live in the terrestrial plane. Mechanized religion. I have pointed out a number of times that machines are increasingly being used to enchant, often abusive enchantments. I have also pointed out that the symbolism on gaming machines can contain spiritual themes. Be careful. You might deride religion and laugh at the idea of setting foot inside a church, but find yourself playing a gaming machine themed on the goddess Isis, to the point where you lose your money, house and family. I've met such a man. In this respect, you are more vulnerable than a churchgoer. You will not realise you have been caught and held in an enchantment which is activating a spiritual, archetypal symbol feeding some deep need in your soul. Spirituality in computer games, books and movies. And be careful with the spiritual content of computer games, books and movies. Take spiritual meaning from them if there are valuable learnings in them, but do not get so enchanted by them that you lose touch with reality. And I need hardly add, do not identify with or give your allegiance to evil gods or goddesses. Just because spiritual symbols and motifs are delivered as entertainment or in a jocular manner, this does not detract from their efficacy. Tattoos. If you are thinking about getting a tattoo, be careful about the symbolism of the artwork. J.E. Serlo, who wrote a dictionary of symbols, notes about tattoos. A mystic purpose lies at the root of the mark or sign of identification. He who brands himself seeks to display his allegiance to that which is signified by the mark. In the last analysis, the attitude of allegiance is reversed. The sign is expected to reciprocate this display of sacrifice and subservience on the part of the individual who has so marked himself, and this is the magic property of the tattoo as a defense talisman. If you are wanting to have yourself tattooed with any dark symbolism, you really need to ask yourself why your unconscious is seeking out this symbol. You could look up the symbol in Serlo's dictionary or another symbol dictionary, which may give you some idea as to the mythological meaning of the symbol. Although symbolic dictionaries can help, the real question is what the symbol means to your individual unconscious. You could try meditation or a dream group, or you could have a hypnotherapist put you into trance and ask your unconscious what it is seeking from the symbol. If you want a defensive talisman, an amulet, it may be worthwhile wearing the symbol in the form of a pendant, bracelet or ring until you are sure you want to be tattooed with the symbol. Inner sanctums. Inner sanctums are private spaces with limited access that you feel privileged to be allowed into. These are not only within places of worship, but exist in clubs and associations with limited membership. Casinos have special gaming rooms and areas available only to heavy gamblers. Universities are inner sanctums, particularly universities with a spiritual component and architecture, such as Oxford, Cambridge and the USA Ivy League universities. Some universities have secret societies which add another level of inner sanctum. Being allowed into an inner sanctum constitutes an initiation. You feel surrounded and protected, privileged and grateful, and go into an awe-inspired enchantment. Under this enchantment you are very vulnerable. The secrecy of the inner sanctum creates a taboo, a special personal secret which deepens the enchantment, as does the collegiate feeling of sharing the space with others of a select group. The enchantment is also strengthened if you have to work hard or pass some test for the privilege, for that increases your commitment and sense of special belonging. Foreign host companies offer scholarships to students who may become influential in the students' own countries. The host countries put carefully selected students through university courses coinciding with the political ideology of the host country. This is a very potent method of enchantment, associated as it is with the aura of a university and a feeling of privilege at having been chosen. The combined God-Mars archetype. Religious zealots and governments will activate the God archetype and Mars archetype together. Witness the jihadis and the crusaders. Look at the medieval cities in Europe with their forts and cathedrals. I'm not saying whether this activation of the God-Mars archetype is legitimate or not. Just be aware of it and make a decision as to whether you want to allow yourself to be taken up into this powerful combined enchantment. Sacrifice, Osiris Jesus archetype. Sacrifice is the archetypal tendency of a person to accept suffering for a greater good. Examples of the suffering archetype are the Egyptian god Osiris and Jesus Christ. Charles Darwin wrote of the survival of the fittest species, not the survival of the fittest individuals. Many individuals of a species sacrifice their own interests for the survival of others of the species. The sacrificial archetype is demonstrated by those who devote their lives to others. These range from soldiers to mothers to charity workers, nurses, nuns and monks. Sacrifice of itself is not wrong. It can be noble. However, like other archetypes, an enchanter can use it for an archetypal enchantment. For example, it forms part of the god Mars' military enchantment. It is also used by abusive partners who keep their spouses tied to them by enchanting, imposing recurring feelings of fear and guilt, stimulating the sacrificial archetype and holding the enchanted partner in an abusive situation. It can be used by exploitative bosses to keep employees working for low wages in charities. If you find you are continually falling under the enchantment of enchanters who are exploiting you by activating the sacrificial archetype, it would be a good idea to see a hypnotherapist and find out the reason. You may have a deep-seated psychological pain which your unconscious is trying to heal by projecting its pain onto others and treating them in an attempt to heal itself. Thank you for listening.